The doctor's diagnosis shattered the room's atmosphere and stole the air from my lungs. The treatment would cost more than $100,000, with less than a 10% chance of success. I searched the faces of my family members in that sterile hospital room, hoping for someone, anyone, to resist the hopelessness. Instead, I saw them exchange those quiet looks that only families who have shared decades together can master. Those looks that determine destinies without wasting a single word. My mother's voice broke through the rhythm of the beeping machines, cold and detached. "Let the old man go. He has lived long enough. We are not throwing money into an endless pit." Without another word, they turned their backs on my grandfather, on me, on basic compassion. I was only 17, without money, and overwhelmed by fear that could not be expressed in words. Yet I stayed, because that old man was far from being a mere inconvenience. He was Robert Bennett, the man who taught me how to fix broken radios, and always believed I could rise above my situation. I would rather die than allow him to face death all alone. What no one in my family could have known was that Robert would live another 7 years. In those 7 years, I would grow into everything they claimed I never would. The hallway seemed to stretch forever after they walked away. I froze in place, gripping Grandpa's medical chart in one hand and my empty wallet in the other. Each tap of my mother's heels fading in the distance echoed like small gunshots down the corridor. She had been the last to leave, unwilling to resist delivering one final cruel blow. Without even meeting my gaze, she threw words over her shoulder as if they were worthless garbage. "You can stay if you like, but do not come back asking us for help later." The rejection was complete. I felt myself disappearing from the family narrative in that very moment. The nurse beside me shifted uneasily. Her name tag said Grace, and her weary eyes clearly reflected the countless moments of sorrow she had seen in these hospital corridors. "Are you Hannah?" she asked softly. I nodded, my voice caught by the tears I was fighting to hold back. "We will need someone to sign the financial responsibility forms. Insurance only covers about 30% of his care. Without prompt action, he will not survive past the week." I did not hesitate. Not because I was calm, I was overwhelmed with fear, but because the thought of him waking up alone, knowing no one stood up for him, was unbearable. I signed every document placed in front of me. Each autograph felt like surrendering my future, chaining me to a debt I could not imagine paying. I gave them my entire college fund consisting of $1,200, carefully saved from scholarships and summer jobs, money meant to be my ticket to a brighter future. "This should cover roughly 8 days," the billing clerk said quietly, unable to meet my eyes. Then I did something my family would have found ridiculous. I went straight to the hospital's human resources office and pleaded for a job. Any job, no matter what. By 6 o'clock that evening, I was cleaning floors in the hospital. In the pediatric ward, my hands were raw and my back cried out in protest. By 10 o'clock in the evening, I found myself once again at Grandpa's bedside, clutching his hand as machines softly hummed, sustaining his delicate lifeline in the darkness. He remained unconscious for 3 long days, 3 torturous days, during which I questioned every choice, every signature, every single moment that had brought me to this point. I stared at the monitors without pause, counting each heartbeat, measuring every breath, silently begging for him to open his eyes and assure me that I had not made a terrible error. When he finally showed signs of waking, his voice was a mere whisper, his eyes glazed and unfocused. Yet his very first words nearly shattered me. "You stayed," he said. I nodded, tears finally escaping down my cheeks. "Always," I whispered back. That night, while he drifted between awareness and sleep, I stood at the window, observing life moving on below. Cars passed, people laughed, the world continued turning as if nothing had shifted. But inside that quiet hospital room, something fundamental within me broke and was reborn stronger than before. They believed they had left me alone with a dying man. What they truly gave me was time. Time to listen, time to understand, time to become the woman I had never been allowed to be around them. They walked away. I moved forward. The doctors predicted he had only a week left, yet those weeks stretched into months. It began with subtle signs: fingers twitching, eyelids fluttering, the way his hand gripped mine just a bit firmer during the night. Each evening after my shifts, I would read to him without fail. Old wartime stories, articles from magazines, even instruction manuals. Anything to fill the quiet room with the sound of a human voice. Sometimes exhaustion from working double shifts got the better of me, and I would find myself dozing mid-sentence. Then suddenly, I'd wake to see him watching me with those kind eyes. One afternoon, as I was feeding him broth with a spoon, he wrinkled his nose and said, "Too salty." I froze, my hand holding the spoon still. Grandpa blinked, his eyes clear for the first time in weeks, and he smiled. "You have always been terrible at seasoning." I laughed through tears. That simple remark was the most beautiful complaint I had ever heard. In the weeks that followed, his healing picked up pace. It was not a miracle, but progress was steady. He started sitting up unassisted, speaking in full sentences, and finally taking unsteady steps while I supported him. Doctors called it statistically unlikely, but I saw it as proof that love outweighs the odds. When he was well enough to leave the hospital, we moved into a small 2-room apartment just across the street. The paint was peeling in large strips, and the heater made noises like a failing engine. We had to share one bathroom with elderly Mrs. Smith next door. Still, being together made it feel like a palace compared to the emptiness I had felt when my family left. During the day, I balanced hospital shifts and online GED studies. At night, Grandpa taught me lessons no school ever could, like how to repair anything with wires and circuits. Coffee makers, radios, broken lamps, anything others had discarded, deeming it useless. "Most people throw things away when they stop working," Robert Bennett told me one evening, as he handed me a soldering iron with great care. "But if you understand how something functions, you can fix it." This applies to machines and people alike. The lessons learned in that small kitchen beneath the flickering light were not just about wiring or tools. They taught me about self-respect, about choosing to mend rather than abandon, about discovering worth where others only saw faults. One evening, after I had successfully fixed a broken switch in our old microwave, Robert watched me with silent pride. "You have the mind of an engineer," he said. I shook my head and replied, "I have the mind of a janitor who just wants to avoid eating cold soup." Yet deep down, I cherished that compliment. It was the first time someone believed I could be more than my circumstances. The quiet from my family became permanent. At first, I hoped they needed time. That once Grandpa got better, they would recognize their error. Instead, my mother closed the bank account she had helped me manage, and the family phone plan I was on was abruptly canceled. The last message I ever received from her said, "You made your choice. Do not expect anything from us ever again." No explanations, no discussion, just erased. I cried for days, not only because it hurt, but because I realized they did not care. Not even a trace of missing me. I was merely another issue they solved by simply walking away. Grandpa noticed it in my expression, even when I offered forced smiles. He never said anything negative about them. He carried too much dignity for that. Instead, he said, "Some people only understand how to love when it's convenient. You are not one of those people." Money quickly became scarce. I worked double shifts, cleaning the hospital at night and helping at the supply desk during the day. I prepared for my equivalency exams during lunch and on bus rides. Sometimes I skipped meals so Grandpa could eat better. He hated seeing that happen. So he offered me a deal. He promised to teach me everything he knew: mechanics, basic programming, how to read blueprints, if I agreed to charge people for the repairs. By the third month, we had a shoebox labeled Repair Fund filled with real cash. By the sixth month, neighbors came knocking, requesting help with fixing appliances, rewiring lamps, even creating irrigation timers for their gardens. We never promoted our work, but the word spread. Hannah and her grandpa do not just fix things, they truly care. One night, while fixing an old toaster left by someone, Grandpa said something that changed my perspective forever. "You don't need their name to create your own." I looked up, puzzled. "Whose name?" He did not respond, continuing to twist wires with those reliable hands. But that night, I understood he was not merely training me for a job. He was preparing me for freedom, a life beyond seeking anyone's approval. That year, I obtained my GED. The next summer, I was admitted to a part-time technology program designed for women in STEM fields. I nearly decided not to apply. Who was I to think I fit into a world of intelligent individuals with prestigious degrees? However, Grandpa said something I will always remember. He told me that people who truly belong are not those born into exclusive rooms. They are the ones who create the doors themselves. So I crafted my own door and stepped through it. 7 years was the time we had after they left. 7 years since I signed hospital documents with trembling hands and a college fund that was empty. 7 years since I became the girl who chose to stay. And during those 7 years, I transformed into something greater. I became Hannah Bennett. Not merely a girl with a mop and a soldering iron, but a designer of systems, a restorer of what others discarded. It all began in our garage. Grandpa and I developed a prototype for an emergency fall detector. Something simple, wearable, and affordable. We spent months testing it. Grandpa would pretend to fall all around the kitchen just to help me identify problems, laughing as he dramatically collapsed on cushions I had placed everywhere. We presented the design to a nearby clinic. They adored it. Soon we received our first small grant, then a second, followed by 2 interns who believed in the project enough to work for coffee and a dream. We named the project Guardian. By the 5th year, we had officially registered as an LLC. By the 6th, we had contracts with 3 elder care homes. By the 7th year, our devices were safeguarding more than 1,000 elderly people. Grandpa became our guide, our symbol of hope, and our most cherished volunteer for experiments. Above all, he was my steady support. In every choice, during every late night, and with every draft I created, he stood by me. He rarely spoke, but when he did, his words held weight. "Success means nothing if it makes you forget who you are," he told me one evening while we celebrated our very first big contract together. That winter, a local newspaper featured our story titled, "From Hospital Janitor to CEO, the Woman Who Built Her Future from a Shattered Past." I never sent it to my mother because it was unnecessary. The article spread throughout town, reached distant relatives, and touched everyone who had once said I was throwing my life away on a man slowly dying. I did not boast, nor did I call anyone, and I certainly did not reply to the cousin who suddenly messaged, "Hey, long time no see. How have you been?" I understood something they never did. My value was not handed down by them. It was forged every night I refused to give up, with every bolt I tightened and every bill I struggled to cover. It came from every encouraging word Grandpa whispered when I felt I could not continue. He was 91 when his health started to decline again, but this time it was gentler and slower. He still enjoyed his morning coffee, reviewed my code, and smiled whenever I entered the room. But deep down, we both knew this time was unlike before. This time, he would not get better. For the first time in 7 years, I was the one unwilling to say goodbye. He passed away on a Tuesday morning. The light outside was soft, as if the world itself was quietly mourning. I already understood the need to be gentle. I found him sitting in his chair by the window, the spot he called his thinking place, with a closed book resting on his lap, a half-finished cup of tea cooling nearby, and the faintest smile lingering on his face. No machines, no noise, just calmness. I held his hand for a long while before I could even call the hospice nurse. Not because I wasn't sure what to do, but because I wasn't prepared to live in a world without his voice. The funeral was intimate, exactly as he had wished. No flowers, no elaborate speeches, just neighbors, co-workers from our early guardian days, and the nurse who once said he was the kindest patient she had ever met. I was thanking people as they left, when I suddenly heard the unmistakable click of expensive heels on gravel. I turned and froze. There they stood. My mother, Uncle Benjamin, his wife Clara, and Cousin Andrew in a sharp black suit as if he had an important meeting. They looked around like visitors observing someone else's sorrow. My mother opened her arms as if 7 years had never passed. "Hannah, sweetheart, you've grown into such a woman." I did not move or reply. She tried again. "I know things got complicated back then, but we are still family. Your grandfather would have wanted us to be united for this." I wanted to laugh, scream, ask if she remembered leaving me abandoned in that hospital corridor like trash, but I did not. I simply nodded toward the chapel. "He is inside. You have 5 minutes." After the service, as I was collecting donation cards for our new elder care grant, she approached me again. This time, that strange smile appeared, the same one I had seen at every tense family gathering. "So about the estate," she said casually, "we assume there is a will. Your grandfather was not careless." I met her gaze firmly. "There is one." Her grin stretched wider, like a predator preparing to pounce. "Excellent. We will need to talk about how everything will be divided." That was when I finally voiced the truth that needed to be heard. "You abandoned him, letting him die alone in a hospital bed. Mom, you did not visit for 7 years. You never called, not once inquiring if he had survived. You only showed up now because you thought there was something of value." She blinked a single time, and then snapped back, "Do not be so dramatic. You remain his granddaughter, but we are his children. He would never cut us out." I glanced down at the wooden envelope in my hand, his will, sealed and notarized. Quietly I said, "You will find out tomorrow, but remember, he was far less forgiving than I am." The next morning I arrived at the law office 15 minutes early. Not out of anxiety, but because I had been preparing for this moment for 7 years. Mr. Patterson, Grandpa's attorney, greeted me with calm respect. He had known Grandpa since the early days of our first prototype, helped us file the LLC documents, and was now here to help close this chapter. The conference room smelled of polished wood and aged paper. I took a seat at the far end of the long table. In front of me lay a sealed envelope waiting to be opened. A small wooden box held an envelope, the very one Grandpa had told me not to open until this particular moment. Shortly after, they appeared. My mother entered with an air of authority, her heels striking sharply on the wooden floor. Following her was my uncle, his expression tense with anticipation. Across from me, my cousin was already envisioning his future inheritance. No greetings were exchanged. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat and announced, "This is the final will and testament of Robert H. Bennett, dated, notarized, and validated on his 90th birthday." Pausing, he then looked my way and said, "Miss Hannah, would you kindly open the box now?" I lifted the lid, revealing Grandpa's pocket watch, the very one he wound every morning precisely at 7 o'clock. Underneath, there was a flash drive and a folded note. Pushing the drive to Mr. Patterson, he plugged it into a screen. Suddenly, Grandpa's weathered face appeared, and his calm, clear voice filled the room. If you are hearing this message, it means I have departed from this life. And if the people I believe to be in this room are truly present, then I am not surprised. My mother shifted uneasily while my cousin stared at the ceiling. Let me clarify, Grandpa's voice continued. I, Robert Bennett, bequeath the entirety of my estate, including guardian shares, real estate holdings, financial accounts, and all intellectual property, to my granddaughter, Hannah Bennett. Everything. My uncle's mouth fell open in disbelief. My mother leaned forward, her anger apparent. This cannot be legal. He must have been coerced, she insisted. She was by his side every single day. Who can say what she might have said to turn him against us? Mr. Patterson displayed a notarized document. Robert Bennett had undergone a cognitive assessment 2 weeks prior to this recording. Full mental competence was confirmed. No signs of pressure. My cousin rose to his feet. You must be joking. She was just a janitor. She depended on him financially. Grandpa's recording went on as if he had anticipated every objection. To those who claim she took from me, I respond she granted me 7 extra years. She gave me mornings filled with sunshine and coffee. She gave my life purpose. You gave me silence. You abandoned me to suffer because I was a burden. She stayed and created something more than a business. She built a life. My mother's face drained of color. I said nothing. Mr. Patterson folded the paper carefully. There are no alternate heirs, and a clause that forbids any legal dispute is included. Any attempt to contest will erase all claims to inheritance. Robert Bennett's desires are final. Hannah Bennett is the only beneficiary. They left without making a sound. The moment the office doors shut behind us, my mother spun around, voice full of venom. Do you think this makes you superior? You manipulated an old man and tricked him into handing everything over? I looked at the woman who had once told me I was wasting my life on a man who would not survive the night. Now she stood mere inches away, furious not over the loss of her father, but because she lost the fortune he left behind. You abandoned him, I replied calmly. You abandoned both of us, and for 7 years, not once did you call to check if he was still alive. My uncle's voice grew firm as he said, We are his children, Hannah. You cannot just erase that. I faced him directly. What did that title mean to you exactly? A responsibility? A connection? Or merely a birthright you assumed guaranteed financial gain? He tightened his fists. We can contest the will, my cousin burst out. We will go public. We will tell the media you exploited a dying man suffering from dementia. I smiled, not out of amusement, but because I was prepared. Go ahead, I said, and I will release the complete unedited footage of Grandpa's testimony, his medical reports, and his daily journals. I will publish his handwritten letters about what each of you did or failed to do when he needed you the most. Let everyone see the true nature of your family. They fell silent, but I was not finished yet. Reaching into my bag, I took out one last envelope. This, I said as I handed it to my mother, was written by him a month before he died. It is not a legal document. It is personal. She hesitated before opening it. 3 words appeared in Grandpa's clear, steady handwriting. You walked away. Her hands shook as she crushed the note in her palm as if paper could wipe away guilt. For the first time, she remained quiet. No curses, no pleas, just silence. And that silence spoke volumes. I turned to leave but stopped at the door. You lost the inheritance, I said without looking back. But more than that, you lost him. The reality is you lost him long before his passing. I did not take anything away from you. You gave everything up the moment you chose ease over love. Half a year later, the house was quieter than ever, though not completely empty. I held on to the kettle he cherished, the chair beside the window, and the pocket watch, which I still wound every morning at 7 o'clock like a ritual, like a solemn vow. But what I did afterwards was not about grieving. It was about creating something new. I invested part of the inheritance to establish the Bennett Foundation. The name reflected not only his last name, but also the man who transformed abandonment into hope. Our goal was clear: to give technical education and emotional support to teenagers and seniors facing neglect, just as we had. We began modestly with 3 laptops, 2 folding tables, and a leased room in a community center. The moment our very first student constructed her own simple fall detection device and exclaimed, "It really works," I felt a powerful click inside me. That joy, that spark, was him living on through us. A year after that, we launched our first permanent workshop. 5 years later, one of our scholarship graduates became a lead developer at Guardian. When she invited me to her graduation, she said, "I never had a real family, but your foundation made me feel like I mattered." I gave her Grandpa's most treasured wrench, the one he always said repaired more than just circuits. I told her, "You do matter, and never let anyone make you forget that." I still live in the same home. The company has grown larger, but my life stays uncomplicated. No grand estates, no extravagant vehicles, only meaning and calm. Because I understand what true wealth means. It is the extra 7 years I shared with him. It is the souls I have helped mend. It is the girl I once was, and the woman I evolved into because I remained when others walked away. Occasionally, I reflect on the day they left us at the hospital and how shattered I felt. Then I consider what emerged from that moment. Not resentment, but connection. Not revenge, but healing. Not mere inheritance, but a lasting legacy. Tonight I will wind the pocket watch once more. And someday, when I sense someone else is ready, I will pass it along. Not due to its material worth, but because it holds everything that truly counts. I will repeat what he once told me. You stayed. You built, and now it belongs to you. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please share it with others who need to hear that sometimes the experiences that break us down are the very ones that reshape us into who we are meant to be. Remember to comment and subscribe for more stories about choosing love in the hardest moments and creating beauty from abandonment. Keep in mind, the strongest families are not always the ones we're born into. Sometimes they are the ones we create ourselves.